Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So it is March 1st, which means it is time to do my monthly wrap up where I talk about all the books that I both purchased and ended up reading over the course of February. So I didn't get through a ton of books in February. I only got through 4 and only one of them I have the physical copy of. So that's fun. I also got 10 books, so not as much as I feel like it has been the last couple of months, but it's still like a good amount. So I'm gonna go through the books that I purchased first and then talk about the books that I actually read. All right, so I'm gonna just go ahead and just do these in no particular order just because it's easier for me. So I have 4 hardcovers and then I have 6 paperbacks. So I think I'm just going to talk about the hardcovers first because those were the ones on top of my pile, and then I'm going to go ahead and talk about my paperbacks afterwards. So first up, I did get a new release. This is called The Other March Sisters, and it is by Linda Epstein, Ali Molinenko, and Liz Parker. So Liz Parker is the author that I do recognize in this book, and I'm not sure exactly what this book is about, but I guess it is kind of giving Little Women vibes. And Liz Parker was the author of In the Shadow Garden, which is a book that I both have read and reread. The reread of that book was actually my final read of 2024. So I did purchase this book, and it's my first new release that I have purchased. So I'm really excited to read this eventually this year. And if it's anything like In the Shadow Garden, I feel like I'll really enjoy it. Also, if my head or my eye looks a little funky, earlier this week I fell and hit my head on a door. So I had a lovely little goose egg, so you can see the remnants of that, and now I also have bruising on my eye. So if my face looks weird, that's why. All right, the next hardcover that I have was part of a bigger order from Book Outlet. I got 6 books during their $5.99 fiction sale, which happened last month. I think it is going on in this month for at least a few more days. I'm not 100% sure about that though. But yeah, so one of the books that I did purchase in that order was House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. There is a person by the name of Emma Skies, who I follow her on all of her social media, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, but I found her on TikTok, and she has talked about this book before, and she was not the biggest fan of it, but she did enjoy it. I guess it has something to do about vampires, and I think it gives more of a gothy kind of vibe. So I'm really excited to read this and see if I enjoy it. So another book that I got in that Book Outlet order, and my only other hardcover that I got from that order, is Wistress by Nadine Brandes, something like that. This is a book that I have had on my Amazon wish list for a very, very, very long time. I think I put this on here right when I first got back into reading. Had it on my Amazon wish list for so long, I don't really remember what it's about, but I do like the hardcover, and I think it looks really cool, and it does look like fantasy, and there could be I don't know, maybe fairies or powerful people involved, so I'm very excited to eventually read. Then this last hardcover is one that pretty much social media influenced me to get it, because I kept seeing it everywhere these last couple of months, and I was like, I need it. I need this book in my life. I don't know what it's about, but I had to get Spark of the Everflame by Pen Cole. I have seen this book everywhere, on every single form of social media. It is just all over the place right now, and that is the most surefire way to get me to read a book, is just to put it everywhere. So I did finally grab it. I think right now there's 3 books in the series, and I don't know if it's supposed to be just 3. I think there might be a 4th one coming out soon. I could be totally wrong about that, but this is the first book, Spark of the Everflame, and I am excited to read it. I have no idea what it's about though, but I'm excited. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the paperbacks that I got. Like I said, I got 6. Some are from the Book Outlet order, and then others are ones that I just ended up acquiring over the course of this month. So the first paperback that I have is another book from that Book Outlet order. I got, like I said, I got 6 books total. So we have The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is a book that, again, I knew about it when I very first got onto TikTok, when I very first got back into reading, and they had the old covers with like the real people on them, and I wasn't a huge fan of them. And then these new covers came out like a couple of months after I got back into reading, and I love these covers a lot more, and I've been wanting to get them forever, but I just have never brought myself to do it because I'm not one who just goes out and just like picks up a romance, you know what I mean? Like, it takes a while for me to finally get it. Even though I do love reading a good romance, it's just not my go-to genre most of the time. I usually prefer to go towards fantasy or thrillers. Saw this on Book Outlet. Again, it was $5.99, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take this opportunity and I'm just gonna get it. And this is book 1. I think there's 5 books in the series, maybe. And then I think there's also a like spin-off series that I think one of the newest book of that series just came out. So very excited about this, and yeah, and this I think will also be my first hockey romance. So that's fun. All right. So when I got Spark of the Everflame, there was another book that I got, and it was buy one get one 50% off. First of all, I love that they do that all the time, and that they have all these different like tables where you can do that. So the 2 books that I did that for, one is a book that I have wanted for a really, really long time. It was another book that I like, it was one of those books that I like kind of kept seeing like when I was very first introduced to BookTok, which is what eventually led me to get back into reading, because it was like fall time, and that is The Saturday Night Ghost Club by Craig Davidson. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's about these friends who I think like summon a ghost or something, and it's set in Niagara Falls, which that's super fun, and it's nice and short too, which I'm very excited about. I love a good like friendship book. I think that's really great. I mean, I did grow up reading like the Babysitter's Club books when I was a kid, so that kind of makes sense. But I did purchase this, and I am very excited because, again, this was like one of the very first books that I was like, oh, I want to read that, and it's been almost a year and a half and I still haven't read it, and I just now bought it. So, but now that I have it, I'm hoping that that will help, you know, actually get me to read it, especially because I didn't realize it was this short. So that, I think that'll help too. And then the other book, which is like the book that I was like, okay, I'll get it, especially since it's buy one get one 50% off. And this is another book that Emma put on my radar, so shout out to her, and that is The Spirit Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. I feel like this is gonna be a book that is kind of outside of my comfort zone. I think it's more of like a sci-fi than a fantasy. I think it is a sci-fi, actually. And sci-fi is not a genre that I really read at all. I think it's just because a lot of the sci-fi that I had to read like in high school and stuff went so over my head, and I just didn't understand what anybody was talking about. So I've kind of been put off by sci-fi, but I'm wanting to give it more of a shot, and I do have some sci-fi books in my TBR already. I've heard great things about this book from not only Emma, but also another bookish social media person, Newly Nova, or Lexi. I think this was one of her favorite books of last year. So I was like, you know what, 2 of my like favorite book talkers and like bookish social media people recommend this book, so I'm like, I'm just gonna try it. And worst thing is I don't like it. So yeah. These last 3 books are all from the Book Outlet order. I have Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 3rd Brandon Sanderson book I have purchased, and I have not read any of his books yet. Why am I like this? I don't know. This is his YA series, and again, I think it's also more of a sci-fi kind of, you know, genre. He is more of a fantasy sci-fi writer, but I feel like I've been very hesitant about reading a Sanderson book just because I hear his world and his writing is like very complex, and that does kind of make me a little nervous. But with this being his YA series, I'm hoping that it'll be not necessarily easier to read, but I think it'll maybe be a little bit more comprehensible for me because it's meant for a younger audience. I don't know if it actually is or not. I hope that wasn't insulting, because I'm not trying to make it sound insulting, but I am very excited to read this, or just one of his books in general. I will read Brandon Sanderson eventually. Also, gotta love a floppy book. Alright, the last 2 books are actually both thrillers, so I'm just gonna go ahead and show you guys both of them at the same time. So first we have All the Dangerous Things by Stacy Willingham. I actually read one of her other books, A Flicker in the Dark, last year over the summer, and I really loved it. I think it was like one of my favorite thrillers of the year last year. I actually read like almost 100 pages of that book in a day. Like, I'm not usually one that does like a binge read like that. Usually I read 1, maybe 2 chapters at a time. If it's like really short chapters, I might get through a few, but I'm usually not one who just like reads the book like on and on and on and on. So that, I think, said a lot about Stacy and her writing as well as the story itself. Really do recommend that book. It's a fantastic book. So I'm really excited to get into this other book. It's called All the Dangerous Things, and what's funny is the main character in this book has the same name as my sister, and it's actually spelled correctly. I hope that doesn't affect how I read this. I hope not. I don't think it, well, we'll see. But I am very excited. And yes, I know it has a Target sticker on it. I did not get this from Target. I got this from Book Outlet. Just, it's a second hand kind of store. Well, not second hand, but like overstock is probably the better word for it. So, yeah. All right, and then the last book physical book that I purchased this month, because I swear if I tried to do every single form of books that I have purchased over the course of this month, we would be here all day, because I have bought so many Kindle books and so many audiobooks. Like, well, not a lot of audiobooks, but like definitely a lot of Kindle books, especially this month. So again, we would be here all day if I tried to do all of that. So the last physical book that I got this month is Just Another Missing Person by Gillian McAllister. This is what it looks like. I am very excited to read this. I always love books that surround a missing person. I don't know why. I think it's because missing person cases in real life are just so fascinating to me, because it's like, how does a person just disappear into thin air? Like, it's just, that has always been like a fascinating phenomenon to me. It's just people who just vanish without a trace. So I'm very excited to read this book as well. So yeah, and I've never read Gillian McAllister either, but I think her other book, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, I think my grandmother has it. I think she actually has it in her room. So very excited to read this, as well as all the other books that I have purchased this month. All right, now that we have talked about all the books that I have purchased this month, let's go ahead and talk about the 4 books that I actually was able to read this month. So February was like a crazy month, both in my work life and my personal life. It just, a lot of things happened, both good and not so good. I'm not gonna get into it here, but just know it was kind of a crazy month. And it was also with February being the shortest month of the year, I wasn't expecting to read a whole lot. I actually also read 4 books in February last year, so that's just kind of my thing. And I actually finished 2 books yesterday, just so I could have more than just a couple of books on here. My bruise looks so bad right now. Alright, so the first book that I read this month, I do have on my Kindle, but I accidentally deleted the book from my library before I made this video, so you're gonna have to deal with the tiny screen again, but this is what it looks like. Let's see if I can get it without the glare. Anyway, it is called For Whom the Bell Tolls by J.C. Lin, and this book is actually a very interesting read for me. So J.C. has a TikTok account called See Ya Later, but C is spelled S-E-A, and she has had this like skit series on her TikTok page called the Hell's Bell series, and she has been doing it for several years now, at least I think like 3 years now, and I have been watching that series since the beginning of it. And so this book is actually a prequel to that series. It is basically the origin story of the main character Lily, and kind of how she was in her life. And then the whole TikTok series is about the front desk of hell. And it is kind of a book that talks about how that all got started by Lily, as well as finding her partner in the afterlife, Beleth, or Belle. And I loved this book, and I know that my back hurts, so I'm gonna lean back a little bit. Anyway, I loved that book. I know there probably is a bias because I know the characters that they're talking about so well, but I also think that made it such a much more fun experience for me, because it made me just totally picture what was going on so much better, and it just made it such a fun reading experience. And I had a blast reading this book. I thought it was fantastic, and the writing, considering JC this is like her book debut, she did an amazing job. Like, the writing was so good. Like, I was so impressed by her, and the relationship between Lily and Belle, it is fantastic. Like, there is a true, genuine love between the two of them, and also the spice. Oh my! This book is definitely extremely spicy, and I think is now officially the spiciest book that I've ever read, because it just, but there's so much more to it than that, and I really enjoyed it. And even if you've never checked out the Hell's Bell series, or you've never even heard of it, I think that this book would be a amazing kind of start, because like I said, it is kind of the prequel to that series, so it is kind of a good idea to maybe go in and read the book so you kind of know what's going on. If you decide to check out the TikTok series, which I do recommend, it is so good. I loved it, and I did give it 4.5 stars. I was debating on giving it 5 stars, but it just didn't give that like absolute 5-star feeling to me. And I'm trying really hard this year to like not give 5 stars without being absolutely confident about giving like that it is a 5-star read, because there were a couple of reads that I had last year and even the year before when I first got back into reading that I was like, you know, yeah, that was good, and I gave it 5 stars because I was like, I mean, it wasn't bad. There wasn't anything I hated about it, so I guess it's a 5-star. I want my 5-star reads to be like, this is an absolute 5-star book without a doubt. I love this. This is one of my favorite books ever. Like, I am in love with this book. And For Whom the Bell Tolls just didn't quite hit like that, but I still absolutely loved it. I thought it was great, and I do recommend that book. So The Paris Express is a book that I actually got through NetGalley. It is not officially out yet, but this is what it looks like. And it is actually based off of a real life event that happened in Paris in the 1890s, and it is about a train that had a really bad accident. And the book basically takes you through the events on the train, like throughout its entire journey, from Granville, France, I believe, to Paris, France, and it tells you the story of the people that are on it in all three classes, first class, second class, and third class, as well as a woman that is on the train that has some very malicious intents, and just kind of what ended up happening. This book, like I said, I got it from NetGalley, so thank you so much to NetGalley for letting me read this. And one of the main reasons why I requested this arc was because, first of all, I always have had a really big interest in history. I don't know why, I think it's just always been something that's been very interesting to me. And especially with me living in America, like trains are, especially as transportation, is just not something that I experience very often, especially where I live in the Midwest. My main mode of transportation is a car. So it's very interesting to kind of think about this time period, and it was very interesting to go through like each people's experience, especially during that time period, because there was one part of the book where like someone was having to explain to another passenger what a film was, because it was still so new at the time. So yeah, it's crazy. I will say though, I wasn't a huge fan of this book. I understand it's based off of a true story, and you know, it wasn't like the most horrible accident ever, but I think just the way that it was written and just having not very much of a plot, it was definitely more of a character-driven story, which normally characters are like my go-to. Like if I love the characters, like I'm gonna love the book. And I think what happened is there was just so many characters that we were following. Like I think it's like between like 10 to 20 characters that we were following, because we were following several different passengers in all three classes, because on this train they were all separated. Like they had first class passengers and second class passengers and third class passengers, and we were following multiple people in every single one of them. So it was just hard, because not only was I getting things mixed up, but it also made it feel like things were just dragging on and on and on, because you know, it was a long train journey, you know, and nothing really happens until the very end. Spoiler alert, I'm sorry. Because it's all about like this journey on this train that's, you know, about to head into disaster. That's like kind of the main thing with the book is, you know, we're watching the journey into disaster. And I think because of the fact that this disaster, you know, was the end and not the actual plot itself, it was kind of boring. And with having so many characters, I just felt like we didn't ever have time to like really connect with them and get to know them. So they felt very one-dimensional to me, if I remembered who they were even, because like I said, I had a really, really hard time following each of these characters and figuring out who was who. And what's crazy is you would think, because like I said, there's a person on this train that has very malicious intents, so you would think we would be spending a good chunk of time following this particular person. And yeah, we follow them quite a bit, but not to the point where I feel like we should have. I feel like, especially if the intentions of like with the intentions of this character, I feel like she needed to be a really big focus, and she just kind of wasn't. I mean, not to the degree that I feel like she could have been. I don't know. But yeah, this book does come out, I think March 17th or 18th, so I think next week, or here in a couple of weeks. the book will be out. So I will still recommend it. I did give it 3 stars. I was debating on giving it 2 or 2.5, but then the ending was actually really good, and so I did bump it up a little bit. But yeah, it was just very anticlimactic, I guess. I just wanted more. I did a 24-hour readathon Thursday night into Friday. I do have a video about it on my TikTok if you want to go ahead and check it out. So the first book that I finished during my 24-hour readathon, like I said, I finished 2, is A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the 3rd book in the ACOTAR series. And yes, I finally finished it. I'm so excited. And good God, I love this book so much. When I tell you it was this close to being a 5-star, like there still was just a little bit of me, and I might even change it at some point, but as of right now, if I had to be like really nitpicky, I'd probably give it like a 4.75, but that's just too much for my brain, so it's a 4.5. I loved this book so much. I'm obviously not going to really talk about the plots because I feel like it would just give away huge spoilers, and I don't want to do that. But I loved this book. I thought it was really, really great. I loved the plot. The characters I felt like had really great development. There's a couple of characters that only had very, very minor parts in the first 2 books that we got to really, really focus on in this book. And I loved that. I thought that they really shined throughout this book, and it was really great to kind of see certain characters get like redemption arcs and things like that. And yeah, I think this is probably my favorite so far, which is funny because I gave the first book 5 stars, but that was kind of one of those books where it was like, should I have given it 5 stars? I don't know. So I'm sure on a reread I probably would change that. But anyway, yeah, really loved this book. I listened to this on graphic audio through Audible. I will always recommend the graphic audio for these books. If you have the ability to listen to audiobooks and if you have the ability to listen to the graphic audio, just trust me, it is so good. It may not be for everybody, but I think it just makes this experience just so much better, especially having a different cast of characters. But yeah, loved this book. There was, I think, some parts where I felt like one of the characters, I felt like his plot kind of got forgotten about, but I feel like it also kind of makes sense towards the end. But there was certain parts where it was like, what happened to this character? Like, why are we not, especially because it seemed to be much more of a focus at the beginning of the book, and then it just kind of wasn't. If you know, you know. But yeah, really enjoyed this book. I recommend this book and this series. I know another person recommending Sarah J. Maas, but there's a reason she's popular. All right, and then the last book that I read this month, which I did remember to keep it on my Kindle, is Melody of a Curse by Jana Ruth. So that book is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, and it is set in modern day. I don't think it ever gave a location where it was from. I think it's like somewhere in Europe though, because like some of the lingo and slang that was used kind of made me think that it was set more in like a European area, but I could be totally wrong about that. So the book follows 2 different characters. One is Jonas, who has very severe PTSD from being deployed to Afghanistan, and he is still dealing with a lot of the effects of that, you know, regarding nightmares, visions, all that kind of stuff. And then he ends up taking a job from this guy who asks him to watch his adult daughter named Sophie, who was a aspiring ballerina, but then she ends up kind of giving it all up to go dance at this club that has a very interesting kind of mysteriousness to it, and it's called the Demoti. or Damati. I said Damoti, but I'm not sure if that's right. And Jonas and Sophie both realize that the club is so much more than that. And yeah, so that book, it was definitely very interesting. Being a dancer, being in the dance world my whole life, it was very, very fun to kind of see, you know, that kind of point of view, because not the books that I've read, granted I haven't read a lot of books, especially since I've gotten back into reading about dancers, but I feel like whenever people do write books about dancers, they don't really know that much about dance, so it just feels like it's kind of not realistic. But I feel like Sophie's portrayal, especially being a kind of ballerina that's kind of given up on her dreams, was very realistic. And what was really fun was that every chapter was a different ballet step, which was really, really cool. Really loved that about her, and it helped me really connect with her. And I also really loved the character of Jonas. I felt like he was a very real character, and I'm not going to speak on PTSD and the traumas of war or anything like that, because that's something that I've never experienced before. But I felt like getting that's the first time I've ever, you know, really had such a really big betrayal of something like that. I mean, I've had characters in books that have experienced things like nightmares and, you know, really bad memories of certain events and things like that, but I feel like Jonas's story was like on a whole other level, and I honestly really, really enjoyed reading about it. And I think it just made me have so much more, you know, love for him, and made me really connect with him more. But with that being said, this book was just okay. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I mean, I definitely think there were a lot of parts of it that I liked. I really loved the characters of Sophie and Jonas, but I don't know. I just felt like a lot of this book was just the same thing happening over and over and over again, of just Sophie going to the club and dancing all night and then coming back. Like, that was pretty much the plot of this book for like a good chunk of it. And to me, I just feel like I needed more than that. Like, I feel like if we had more about, like, maybe them learning more about the club and its history, or I don't know, maybe learning more about like what is happening, because there's like a curse element in the book, and maybe learning more about that, like all this stuff that I feel like we could have gotten little hints of like during the book, it like all was like all pushed until the very end. And I don't know, I just felt like it like all happened all at once, and it just, I don't know. So like I said, it just felt very clunky to me. Like, to me, like, it was just a very clunky plot and a very clunky book, if that makes sense. Like I said, I didn't hate it, but at the same time, I just was like, okay, all right. So those are all of the books that I both purchased and read in the month of February. And I feel like this month was a pretty good month, but at the same time, I do also feel like it was just a crazy month. So hopefully, in terms of like what I'm able to read and what I do read, I will be able to do a little bit better. I do have like a week off in March because of my job and stuff. So I think that'll help, because it gives me a little bit of free time during the month. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!